Most men over 60 think their struggles with intimacy are just part of getting older. But what if it's not age at all? What if the real problem is how they've been taught to handle desire, rushed tense, overstimulated, and without rest, leaving their bodies drained and their brains rewired for disappointment? Silent habits like breath-holding daily repetition or over-reliance on porn are quietly eroding the very systems that once brought joy, leaving behind numbness, distance, and shame. But there's good news. With a few simple changes backed by real science and decades of clinical experience, men can reclaim not only their function, but their confidence, depth, and emotional connection. Curious if your daily routine might be part of the problem? Drop a comment. What's one myth about aging and intimacy you used to believe?
Welcome to Stories True Health, where real stories meet real science. Guided by Dr. True, we uncover the hidden truths behind aging healing and the choices that shape our future.
Dr. William H. Carter had spent over 3 decades examining what most men were too embarrassed to talk about: how aging truly affects their sexual health. In a quiet urology clinic in suburban Denver, Carter had become known not just for his discretion, but for his deep understanding of the male body after 60. He often said, "What destroys a man's intimacy after 60 isn't lack of desire. It's silent damage from habits no one ever warned them about." Carter's office had seen thousands of aging men, but one patient stood out: Donald Hayes, 67, a retired high school teacher from Colorado Springs. He walked in looking healthy, with a clean bill of cardiovascular health, no diabetes, and a stable marriage of 42 years. Yet, he felt something was wrong. "I don't feel connected anymore. I go through the motions. I'm still doing it, but it feels like I'm not there," he confessed. Carter nodded. He had heard variations of that same story hundreds of times. What puzzled Donald and many others was why everything seemed to fade so subtly. There were no dramatic changes, just a slow dulling of pleasure, longer recovery times, and growing emotional distance. That's when Dr. Carter started explaining what few doctors dared to say plainly. It's not aging itself, it's how we age. One of the biggest culprits he pointed to: masturbation mistakes men had picked up in silence. To explain it, Carter broke down some simple science. After 60, the body's production of nitric oxide, an essential molecule that relaxes blood vessels and allows for healthy circulation, declines naturally. This affects not only cardiovascular health, but also the ability to maintain an erection and experience sensitivity. Research from the Cleveland Clinic 2020 shows that nitric oxide levels in older men drop by nearly 50%, significantly reducing vascular elasticity and responsiveness. In parallel, testosterone, the primary hormone regulating libido and stamina, also falls. But what made things worse wasn't just biology, it was behavior. Carter had found that certain patterns, particularly how older men approach solo intimacy, could accelerate this decline. Donald had been unknowingly reinforcing those damaging patterns. His routine was simple: late-night stress relief, rushed, and habitual, usually accompanied by pornography. He never thought it could be harming him. "I figured if I still had desire, it meant I was doing okay," he said. But Dr. Carter shook his head. Desire isn't the only metric. It's whether your body is processing that desire in a healthy way. He explained that while many seniors believe masturbation is a private, harmless coping mechanism, the way it's done, the speed, the tension, the mental stimulation can create invisible strain on the body's most delicate systems. And so began a journey of unlearning one mistake at a time. The first A habit so common, it was almost invisible: rushing. Carter would later call it vascular panic. And it's where Chapter 2 begins. When Dr. Carter first explained the term vascular panic to Donald, the man looked puzzled. "You mean I can stress my blood vessels just by rushing?" Carter nodded solemnly. "Yes, and it's more common than you think. As men age, the elasticity of their blood vessels declines. This means their circulatory system becomes less able to handle sudden spikes in blood pressure or heart rate. During rushed or aggressive masturbation, especially without proper mental or physical relaxation, the body mimics a fight-or-flight response. The heart races, the blood vessels constrict and then dilate rapidly, and the microvasculature, tiny capillaries, especially around the pelvic region, can become strained. While these changes may not be immediately noticeable, repeated episodes can lead to subtle vascular trauma. Over time, this contributes to poorer blood flow, reduced erectile firmness, and lower sensitivity. Donald was stunned. I always thought quick was better get it over with, and sleep, he admitted. But science told a different story. A study published by the American Journal of Hypertension, 2019, found that individuals over 60 who experienced regular short bursts of intense cardiovascular exertion without warm-up or mental preparation were at greater risk for endothelial dysfunction. The endothelium, a thin layer of cells lining the blood vessels, is responsible for releasing nitric oxide and maintaining healthy circulation. Once compromised, it doesn't recover easily. Although the study focused on general cardiovascular stress, Carter emphasized that similar principles apply to sexual arousal and release. When the brain sends signals for pleasure under conditions of tension or rush, the body can't respond smoothly. Instead, it reacts defensively, creating a pattern of vascular resistance that builds up over time. Donald began to connect the dots. He had noticed his erections weren't as firm, and his recovery time had lengthened. But he had never suspected that his nightly routine was training his body to associate arousal with stress. The faster I went, the less I felt, he said. And I just thought it was age. Carter explained that the brain and blood vessels work in tandem. When one experiences pleasure in a calm, connected state, the body rewards that pattern with improved function. But when arousal is linked to urgency, disconnection, or tension, it erodes the very systems it depends on. In older adults, the margin for error is thinner. The loss of nitric oxide combined with the fragility of aged capillaries makes rushing not just unproductive, but harmful. The solution: slowing down. Practicing presence. Relearning how to feel rather than chase. Pleasure isn't about speed, it's about depth, Carter said. As Donald nodded thoughtfully, he realized that slowing down wasn't just a sexual correction, it was a shift in mindset. A shift he wished he had learned decades earlier. But there was more to fix. Rushing was only one piece of the puzzle. The next mistake wasn't about speed, but about pressure. That's where Chapter 3 begins. Donald sat quietly as Dr. Carter moved on to the second mistake. "Do you tense your lower body, or hold your breath during intimacy?" he asked. Donald hesitated, then nodded. "Sometimes, especially when I'm close." Carter leaned forward. "That reflex is more harmful than most men realize. As we age, the body's vascular and neurological systems become more sensitive to internal pressure. Holding one's breath and tensing the pelvic floor during arousal or climax causes a spike in intra-abdominal pressure. This compresses veins and capillaries, particularly in the pelvic region, and reduces oxygen and nutrient delivery. But more importantly, it suppresses the release of nitric oxide, a molecule essential for blood vessel dilation and erectile function. Nitric oxide isn't just a chemical. It's the body's natural signal for relaxation, arousal, and sensitivity. Without enough of it, even if blood flow begins, it won't be sustained. A 2021 study from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine examined the correlation between pelvic floor overactivation and erectile dysfunction in men over 60. The findings were striking. Men who exhibited chronic pelvic tension and breath holding during sexual activity showed a 48% reduction in nitric oxide markers and significantly lower scores in erection hardness and duration. The researchers concluded that unconscious tension, especially during solo activity, may become ingrained over decades and actively contribute to erectile decline. "It's like clenching your fist and wondering why your hand hurts afterward," Carter explained. "We forget the body needs flow, not force." Donald recalled moments when he would brace himself, trying to push through to climax, often feeling more drained than satisfied. "It was almost like I was fighting myself," he admitted. Carter nodded. "That's exactly what's happening. You're activating the sympathetic nervous system, the stress response, when you should be engaging the parasympathetic system, which governs arousal and relaxation. This imbalance creates a mismatch between brain signals and body readiness, resulting in weaker arousal-numbed sensations and prolonged recovery times. Worse, the habit often persists unconsciously. The good news, it can be reversed. Carter coached Donald on slow-breathing body awareness and intentional relaxation during stimulation. Let go of the idea that performance equals pressure. True pleasure is about flow. Donald, like many of Carter's patients, began to unlearn decades of silent tension. With practice, he noticed that his sensitivity returned and his connection to his body deepened. I never knew relaxation could feel this good. He smiled, but Carter reminded him that it was only the beginning. Because even when you move slow and stay relaxed, if you never give your body time to rebuild, you're still falling behind. That's the hard lesson of Chapter 4. Dr. Carter turned to Donald and asked, "How often do you give your body time to recover after intimacy?" Donald looked uncertain. "I never really thought about it. If I felt the urge, I just went with it." Carter nodded slowly. "That's one of the most common problems I see: no recovery window. For men over 60, the body's ability to bounce back from physical and neurological exertion declines. What once took hours to replenish now may take days. Hormonal signals, neurotransmitters like dopamine and key molecules such as nitric oxide and testosterone, all require recovery periods to regenerate effectively. Without that time, the body runs on fumes. And over time, this silent depletion leads to numbed pleasure, decreased energy, and fading libido. Carter explained what he calls the chronic depletion loop. It starts with daily or near-daily masturbation, without emotional or physical replenishment. At first, there may be no visible consequences. But behind the scenes, the brain's reward system is burning through dopamine faster than it can be restored. Dopamine is crucial not only for desire, but also for focus, motivation, and emotional connection. Pair that with reduced testosterone, which naturally declines after age 60, and a lack of nitric oxide recovery, and the result is a slow, steady loss of vitality. A 2020 study from Harvard's Men's Health Watch found that men over 60 who masturbated more than 4 times per week without intentional recovery exhibited lower testosterone levels, decreased nitric oxide response, and a 33% reduction in reported satisfaction during real intimacy. The study emphasized that quantity without quality can work against the aging male body. Donald reflected on the last few years. "There was a point where I just didn't feel much anymore, but I kept doing it out of habit, out of boredom." Carter gently added, "It's not about the act itself. It's about whether your body is being honored in the process." He encouraged Donald to introduce buffer days between solo sessions to track his mood, sleep, and energy after rest, and to notice how desire actually sharpened with time off. Like a muscle, sexual responsiveness benefits from recovery. "Rest isn't absence, it's preparation," Carter said. "When you give the body time, it rewards you with depth." Over the next few weeks, Donald began spacing out his sessions, incorporating more mindful breathing, light exercise, and even sun exposure to support hormonal balance. Slowly, his sensations returned. His wife noticed a difference too, not just physically, but emotionally. "You seem more here," she told him one evening, and for the first time in years, he felt it too. But Carter reminded him there was still one more trap to watch for, because even when the body is healing, the mind can still be misled. That's where Chapter 5 begins. Dr. Carter saved the most widespread mistake for last. "Over 90% of my male patients over 60 rely on pornography for arousal," he said. Donald looked down sheepish. "I thought it was harmless, easier than talking less messy." But Carter shook his head. "Porn doesn't just stimulate, it rewires. As men age, their neuroplasticity may slow, but it doesn't disappear. Repeated exposure to highly stimulating, unrealistic sexual content trains the brain to associate arousal with novelty, speed, and visual extremes, not touch, presence, or emotional connection. This creates a mismatch between what the brain expects and what real-life intimacy offers. The result is often a decreased response to real partners, reduced physical sensitivity, and an emotional disconnection that sneaks in slowly but deeply." Carter pointed to a 2022 review published in Frontiers in Psychology, which examined over 30 studies on adult male porn use. The findings were consistent. Prolonged and frequent exposure to pornography was associated with lower sexual satisfaction, diminished arousal during partner intimacy, and altered activity in the reward circuits of the brain. Older men in particular were more susceptible due to reduced dopamine receptor sensitivity, a natural part of aging. With fewer receptors to respond to pleasure, the brain craves stronger stimuli, leading many into a cycle of overuse and numbness. "Pornography is like a drug that raises the threshold for pleasure," Carter explained. "Over time, even powerful visuals stop working, and real connection feels flat." Donald reflected on how often he had relied on porn to feel something, anything. "I thought it was better than nothing, but maybe it was making me feel like nothing. Carter nodded and gave him a simple plan to reset his brain. First, a 30-day detox from all explicit content. During that time, he recommended daily walks in nature, eye contact with others, slow breathing, and touch-based activities like massage or warm showers to retrain the brain toward gentle real-world sensory input. Carter called it intimacy rehab, not a punishment, but a return to what the brain was built for: human presence, emotional resonance, and patient stimulation. Donald committed. The first week was heart-empty even. But by week 3, he noticed he was more responsive to his wife's voice, the warmth of her hand, the curve of real, imperfect moments. Carter emphasized, "This is not about morality, it's about neurochemistry. Your brain will follow the signals you feed it," and with each healthier cue, Donald felt his inner circuitry shifting. Not back to his 20s, but towards something more grounded, more whole. He smiled. "It's like I've been numbing myself for years. Now I feel alive again." And so, the journey came full circle, not about reclaiming youth, but restoring dignity, presence, and connection. In the final reflection, Dr. Carter offers the most important lesson of all: it's not too late to feel deeply, to love wisely, and to live with awareness. Aging doesn't mean giving up intimacy, it means learning to meet it with greater care. Let's end with that truth. The biggest lesson from Donald's story is simple but powerful: aging doesn't mean giving up on pleasure. It means learning to approach it with more care, more intention, and more respect for the body you live in today. Just like you wouldn't ignore your heart or your joints, you shouldn't ignore your intimate health. In everyday life, that means listening to your body, letting go of outdated beliefs, and creating space for quiet moments of connection, even if it's just with yourself. Try one of the small changes from this story, whether it's slowing down, breathing deeper, or taking a break from screens, and see how your body responds. If this story helped you or reminded you of someone you care about, please share it with them. Leave a comment below. What belief about aging and intimacy surprised you the most? And don't forget to subscribe for more real stories, expert insights, and practical health advice. What's one small habit you've changed after 60 that made a big difference? Let us know in the comments.